All right, we're going to get started here with our webinar, High Value Guests. Here's the data you need. And this is a hospitality webinar today. And I'm just going to introduce myself and Mike. My name is Ari Kepnes. I'm the Director of Market Research at Density. And my role is trying to understand what all this technology means for impacting the built environment in terms of people's experiences in it and efficiencies that can become from the types of technologies today. And I'm joined here with Mike. Mike, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. Hello. Thanks. Great to be here. My name is Mike Wilson, General Manager at the Sheraton Inner Harbor in Baltimore. Previously, I was in roles in operations for the full service brands and implemented density at 2 of my previous hotels.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike, so much for joining us. And Mike and I are on opposite coasts, so we're going to have this all run seamlessly, hopefully. But we just bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. And then 2 quick housekeeping notes. At the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen, you should see a little folder that says Q, a little Q+A icon. What that is questions. So as we're going through here, please submit your questions. And we're going to be presenting for about 20 minutes, just under that, and then take your questions at the end. So you can list anonymously, or please feel free, and we encourage you to list your name so that we can follow it up afterwards with any questions you have. And then another fun thing that we're doing is, if you are able to stay throughout the whole webinar and you've included your work email, we will be sending over Amazon gift cards. So thank you for your time in advance, and we'll get started here. So the agenda is, we'll talk a little about Density and who we are. We are a company that has a product, and I'll talk about what that is. And then we're going to talk about some problems in hospitality that can solve with this technology, and go in specifically to Marriott's use cases. And Mike is going to be a resource for all of us in terms of how do we think about the future of hospitality and technology and what that matters in terms of experience. So he's a great resource. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're thinking of questions and what you need help with. And then we're going to take your questions as mentioned. So to begin, Density is a people counting sensor platform. So we build a sensor. It's not a camera. It doesn't capture any person identified information. It's only anonymous data. And what it is it's being put above an entryway or an entrance or any sort of threshold where people come and go. And it's measuring in real time how many people are entering and exiting a space in real time. So you can always know how many people are in a space. I'll talk about that in a second. But what that means is that we're able to accurately and anonymously find out how a space is being used and change how it's being operated from that. So to give you a sense, just at a high level, what this would look like is, you could see all of your spaces just in one view, and how many people are there. And we'll get into actually getting alerts to know when a certain capacity is reached. But in general, it's something as simple as this. Once you install those devices, you can see at a high level how your space is being used. If it's getting more busy or less busy, if a certain number of people are there. You get all those type of data just from understanding people count. So what does this actually mean for business value? So why would hospitality care about people counting, especially having to do with deploying resources and making sure you're running an efficient operation? Mike, can you tell us a little about why a hotel or hospitality might care?
Absolutely. In hospitality, and I think this is probably true with other industries, you really want to go where the traffic is. So if we think in terms of what Waze does and GPS does when you're on your way to work, you want to know how to commute, you want to know how to get away from traffic. Well, in hospitality, I want to know where the traffic is. I want to know which room is busy. Is it my concierge lounge? Is it my fitness center? Is it my restaurant? Where do I need to put my resources? Because we are always stretched. Really, in any industry is stretched. We have optimized staffing. Sometimes you're one call off away from collapse in an operation, depending on what size and scale you have. And if I need to pivot from one venue to the next with that same staffing, I need to know in real time, or can I anticipate via some kind of an alert system how I can be where I need to be. And
Great.
is there a way that the building can talk to me?
Mike, I think that's really a great perspective, especially because there's some real challenges that you're talking about. Something I love that you said before is it's like this whole world of technology and sensors and things like that. It becomes abstract, but I really appreciate your perspective because you're all about making it real and making business value make sense in dollars and cents with any technology that you use. And I think it's been really cool to learn from you about how do you actually think about putting this stuff together to make it translate into what you're already doing, but doing it better, which I think is a really good way to think about it. So go ahead, Mike.
If I can raise my hand, I think it's important for the audience just to know that I stumbled upon density on my own, but I might sound like such an evangelist that everybody might think that I'm part of the density family. I'm not. I'm just a customer, and I believe in what you guys have done for me, Ari, and the customer service that I've received. So to anybody listening that cares, I'm doing this as a favor because they've been really good to me.
Thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate that. So let's get a little bit more granular, right? So you've already mentioned a lot of different spaces, but you guys, at this location that we were talking about, there was these amazing lounges, these like VIP lounges where only certain guests could go to. And it sounded like these lounges were a unique problem because you needed to have even better VIP experience. And, to get the services right, you had to know when it was busy, when it was quiet, how many times it was being visited. And, being able to kind of get the whole staff to be servicing it in a way that wasn't just, they weren't standing always there just waiting, but they could actually respond in real time or predict any ebbs and flows. Anything else about this space specifically that you want to highlight?
Absolutely. What we learned early on when we implemented our M Club Lounge at the Marriott Georgetown was that we thought we had it staffed really well, and you might have a leader or additional staff come into the space to staff it during what we anticipate to be peak times. And then we find out that, we're not as busy as we thought we would be. So then what happens invariably is that people walk away. They go to another area in the venue. They change, locations. A manager might say, well, it's pretty slow in here. I'm just going to go to my office and work on whatever I was going to work on. And the minute they turn their back, literally the lounge could fill up. And our staff was scurrying about saying, gosh, I wish they could come back. And, when the clicker mentality at the door really wasn't predictive. We would just count people and say, okay, this is how many people came in the space between 7 and between 9. But it wasn't drilled down by the half hour. It just wasn't predictive. And we needed to be able to have the building tell us when to come back to an area that we just left. Because what we really want to do is we want to have the right amount of staff at the right time. Picture if you can, a lounge that has 50 customers in it, and all those people leave within about the same 15 to 20 minutes to go to their meeting. And those 50 people are going to leave. Their tables have got plates, they've got dishes. Everything is kind of a mess, and we've got to bust those tables really fast to get ready for that person that's coming in there for the first time. So when they walk in for the first time, what kind of experience do they have? Do they have a sea of messy tables with 1 or 2 people bussing tables? Probably not once we implemented density, because we had the right amount of staff in there to clear the room as fast as possible. So instead of having the typical 2 associates in there were times when you had 7 of us in there, and we could really turn that room in just minutes.
Right. So this is actually a picture of us in the lounge. And you'll notice that above Mike's head there, in the middle of the doorway, that is the density device that is able to track those double doors as people enter and exit. And
right.
And when I visited I flew out to this facility, and I was really impressed by how well kept everything was, and that it really did feel like this VIP lounge had an elevated experience. Everything was well stocked. And, it was clear that this was kind of a separate area. And this is kind of something that we also see when we work with some airlines and airline lounges. They also try and differentiate between, okay, here's like our VIP area, but you can't have a VIP area if it's if it's crowded, if it's, people are bussing all the tables, it totally diminishes any of the ambiance that you're trying to create, right? So, Mike, I'm just going to show everyone here a little bit more, because we've thrown around words like real time and predictive. And now that we understand these spaces and we understand why it might be important to have a good experience there, let's go into what this could actually look like. So this is an example of a real-time alert. And it can happen through SMS, meaning text, or through the app itself. We're just going to show here a little demo. People are entering and exiting, and then you get an alert. The executive lounge has reached the 245 number there of visits. You can go into the app and you can see the capacity is at 300. Okay, look how many people are there right now. How many people are coming over the course of the day. I know that was quick, so we'll show a little bit more there. But don't get too bogged down on the actual graphs and charts. We're going to go through that. But just the general idea is, hey, you should know at a certain number of visits or a certain number of people, you should get an alert, and then you can react accordingly. So, that's really the backbone of how to change how you're servicing, and it's called in some places a usage-based mentality as opposed to just set schedules. So let's get into the gym, and that, because I want to start to paint the picture for that's not just one space. There could be other spaces. And then we'll kind of go through a little bit deeper into the data. So why would you, Mike, care about installing a device like Density, which is counting people in real time, in a gym? Why would that be important?
So getting back to what I said about, I really wanted to go to where the traffic is. So let's say that I get an alert that there's, I set my occupancy for the fitness center, and I say that 30 people is my capacity. Probably more, but let's just say 30 people. What I really want is an alert when there's 18 people in there. I want to set a percentage. I want to get an alert. There's 18 people in the fitness center. Why is that important to me? A couple of reasons. One, it's a great time for me to send a leader into the room just to walk the space and be visible. It could be a staff member that just wants to go and greet the guests and say hello. But moreover, we want to kind of look at the space and say, do we have towels in the right place? Do we have enough cups for the water station? Do we have enough disposable headphones? Whatever the case may be, whatever our standards are, to say nothing of the fact that if there were 18 people in a room built for 30, once they leave the space, what do they leave it like for the next person? Are the medicine balls all over the place? Are the dumbbells left on the seats, or are they put back in the rack in an organized fashion? Because that person that comes in there for the first time, we want them to have that great walk-up experience. I would also add that one of the things that we did with Density, what I really liked, Ari, is that I can get a signal when the space empties, because you can select, I want to know when the space empties. And that is a great time to go in there and mop the floor. When maintenance needs to go change a light bulb, or they need to work on whatever it is they need to work on, we want it to be seamless. It's kind of like Disney. Nobody ever sees them cleaning the park, but somehow the park stays clean, right? And it's all behind the scenes. Our guests don't need to know why we do what we do. We just do it, and it's seamless and it's effortless to them.
That's great. And I think I just want to kind of paint the picture here, because what I noticed when I was on the site, you had, the M Club Lounge is a totally separate, almost wing as the gym. And when I say the gym, there's two rooms, right? There's multiple rooms with multiple doors. So yes, it sounds easy that, okay, of course I want to know how many people are there. But, what we want to do is enable that, you don't have to be everywhere at once, right? It allows you to have the sensors go above the doors, and then they talk to each other. So even though we have a gym with multiple doors, and you have this room, which is more for Pilates and other types of activities, and then you have the treadmill and weight area, we were able to measure both of those spaces, which is pretty cool, because then you could also compare and know which rooms to service, or, when they're both emptying out.
Right, and when we look at our analytics, so in Marriott, obviously we care about the customer experience from top to bottom. In 1 month, let's say I'm just going to use a round number. The average success we have is, say, 80% of our guests that attended the fitness center liked it. They were 80% positive, and the next month it's 75%. Well, that would be a mystery, because it's the same fitness center, it's the same standards. I could look here and I could say, wait a second, we had a lot more people on the month where we had 75% success versus 80%. So maybe it's based on occupancy. And then I start to look and say, well, do I have enough equipment? Am I spacing it right? Is the music loud enough? So we really can kind of just, I think, analyze a little bit more and get some more insights, because otherwise you just don't know sometimes.
Yeah, and I was just, while you were talking, I brought up an actual anonymized data version of what we're talking about here. So, if you were to look at the fitness and you want to look at just when the fitness hours are open and certain dates, you could exactly find that out. So what about on this certain day, how many people came? Then you can drill down to on certain hours when it was most visited, and you
Yeah.
can even see the peaks. So, we know that maybe it's never visited by more than 25 people, which makes sense. It has a capacity of 30, let's say. And you can also start to get a sense for staffing. When is it actually most crowded? And the other thing that you mentioned, I think that was really great, was about these alerts. So, let's say we wanted to text a certain number. You wanted to text, you could fill in any number there when the occupancy is greater than 18 people, or when it goes out to 0, and then it's an added alert right there. So really, this is allowing you full transparency, and it's supposed to be easy, and it is, to be able to get those high level views and for any date range that you want or on a daily basis. So I just wanted to, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I thought it was pretty cool that we had that there was the algorithm that set up what you forecast next week being like. I get an email that says, or I can look in and say, yeah, next Wednesday you're going to have 134 people in the fitness center, and darn if it wasn't pretty close to what it ended up telling me it was going to be like. So I remember one day we were trying to install a couple new pieces of equipment. So we actually used Density to pick the day that we were going to install the equipment. So we picked our lowest forecast.
Right.
And so it's that part to me was really cool. It helped in the fitness center, sure, but it really helped in the lounge. And that really helped on staffing. It helped culinary to determine, how many people do I have to really prep food for? And in the evening for the evening offering, Sunday to Thursday, how many people do I think are going to come in there between these hours? Breakfast is 7 days a week. What does it look like? And we know that Sunday is different. A Sunday morning is different than a Tuesday morning in a lounge, right? But just from the adjacencies of the restaurant staff that staff the room, maintenance that might have to service the room, culinary that would cook for the room, all these adjacent departments that would kind of work in collaboration with one another, knew what the M Club was telling them, or knew what the fitness center was telling them. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So I think, we've talked now about real-time and alerts. We've talked about overarching trends and historical, rather. And now we're looking at also predictive. So, it turns out that the lounge gets visited most during the mid sections of the week, the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And maybe that's because there's business travelers that go there. I don't know, but it's kind of interesting to be able to think about it in that way and prepare accordingly. We can even, look at, for the fitness center, which is the days typically that people visit. You'll see, compared to the M Club Lounge, people do visit the weekend. In the weekend, they do tend to visit the gyms. So, that's interesting. It's that it allows you to really be both, as you said, predictive and know before something heats up or something gets busy. And you can not only know that for the course of the week, but then you can get an alert, let's say, an hour before it's going to get it there, because 18 people are already showing up, and so you're maybe set to get to 30. So this is really just a whole new way of thinking about operations and hospitality, and being helpful in the background and getting the data you need to be able to respond. So let's talk about how we actually collect this data, because this is all about the overall intelligence and the predictions that you can make, but what is our approach to this? So Density is not a camera. So we collect only anonymous data that is allowing us to respect people's privacy, to be installed across a campus location or across multiple buildings, right? And it's showing that as people enter and exit, the algorithm is actually using AI to detect what a human object looks like through through depth. So through the contours of looking for a head and shoulder. So that's how it works. I know it sounds a little bit sci-fi, but it's pretty new. And, new types of technology over the past, half decade here. And we've been able to use lasers to actually look for human movement, and then in real time detect what a human versus a non-human what object is. The other thing that's really cool is that this approach means that when people have roller bags, when service cleaning has and janitorial has trash bins, those are not going to be counted as humans. So that's a pretty cool approach. And it allows us to be able to be installed in a lot of different locations. Anything else, Mike, that you want to add about the actual technology and anything there?
Sure, absolutely. Some people might ask, is it easy to use? Super easy to install, super easy to use. If you look back at that picture where Ari and I are standing by the door, for reference, I'm 6'6", and there was good clearance above me. So a lot of venues are going to have very high ceilings, and that's something that you always want to navigate. And you wonder, gosh, my ceiling is really high. Is this going to work? It worked great. And I think, I kind of say this tongue in cheek, our director of engineering probably had the profile of 2 people, and it only counted him as 1. So pretty big dude, and he only counted as 1. So it was pretty incredible.
And the thing is, yeah, thanks, Mike. I mean, the thing that I like to joke about is that, the thing about humans is we all have heads and shoulders, and we can't walk through walls. So when we created the sensor technology, we really built it around those 2 things. We're looking for heads and shoulders, and it's installed above entryways. So if you have multiple doors, humans still are going to be in that defined space because they can't walk through walls. So that's how we're able to generate that in real time. So let's take some questions here, and I'll leave up this email that you can always reach out to. And the other thing I'll urge you to do is, if you want to learn more about and learn from, rather, Mike and his way of deploying density and his overall approach, I think it's pretty industry leading. We do have on our website, we have a whole on our customer story page, a whole video with Mike, a whole case study, and more images of the actual location if you want to know what this means for you. But we do encourage you to reach out and figure out what this could mean for your business and how we could help. So let's take some questions here. Looks like we have a bunch, actually. Does your staff have access to the data? If so, does it change the way your team communicates? That's a great question. Mike, how are you deploying the actual alerts in order? How much of visibility would you recommend that a staff has, and who should have the data?
I don't think there's any reason to restrict per se. For us, it's always easier to have all the managers that are responsible for departments, everybody that touches, let's say, the M Club lounge. So that's my chefs, that's my restaurant leaders, even my front office team, because they are the principal liaisons with our Marriott Bonvoy elites. Really, anybody that needs it. Finance had access to the data because we allocated some of the expenses from our food cost to a different part of the venue based on the number of people going to the M Club. So I don't recall there being a limit to how many people can have access, and then I didn't see any compelling reason to restrict it. I think in terms of the alerts, same thing. Since it was a Marriott sponsored work phone, somebody has a work phone, I can require them to get the alerts onto their phone. So I think that worked pretty well, because you didn't want it to be contingent on, okay, Mike receives an alert, and then now I'm going to send out a text message to 6 people saying the M Club is busy. I just want the building to tell everybody. And that's really how we managed it.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll note is that some customers, what they'll do is they'll have that overall dashboard of intelligence, the actual analytics, that's restricted to, or not necessarily restricted, but it's not a need to have for people who are actually staffing and servicing. So that goes more to the operators, but then the text alerts and the app, that's something that they have people on the ground that want to be able to look at that. Do you make this data available to your hotel guests? If so, how? So we have not yet done that with Mike, but I will say that we have done this in a couple other locations. And here is the approach that we would recommend. Number one is, there are a lot of different apps out there. So Density can integrate. It has an API to integrate into apps. So we're actually working with a major airline right now to put the data into the airport lounges. So if you're at an airport and you're trying to decide like which lounge should I go to, which terminal, I have some time, you'll be able to see, okay, this terminal is totally empty, this actual airport lounge. So that's one use case. The other thing that we're seeing is actually at workplaces, if you want to have these, they have also like these amenities and cafes, they're also letting all of their workers know through a website for their own workers, or through tablets that they have that you can put in different places across campus to see where is it busy, where it's not. I think that is really where a lot of this is moving. That not only is on the operational side, but it's also changing where you're deciding to go. One quick story on that. We're also seeing that Notre Dame, for example, they're a college campus, so they're not necessarily hospitality, although they do have an amazing campus and facility that is a competitive advantage for that school. And they're actually letting the students decide which cafeteria should I go to know which one is busy and not, right in the Notre Dame app, which is super exciting. And they're using students to do that development as well. And Mike, I have a question for you, actually. We have a couple more questions, but I have one for you, which is, was there any time where Density told you data that was like pretty unexpected, like you got a big rush or it was totally empty when you thought? Like, what has Density proved you wrong or surprised you, I guess, since you've had it?
Yeah, it's funny you asked, because actually I go back to the fitness center. There was one time when I got an alert that said the fitness centers had 21 entries in the last 15 minutes. So that took us all by surprise, and that just said, wait a second, that's unheard of. So somebody can get over there really fast and find out what the heck is going on. It turns out that a kids tour group had just checked in, and they all bum rushed the fitness center and thought it would be fun to go in there and play and do whatever they wanted. But because we saw it in very real time, we had security go in there, remove them politely, and then by doing that, the next guest that came in for their workout, they didn't walk into a sea of kids playing on the cardio. So I don't even think we intended for something like that to happen. It was just one of the things that Density did for us. Yeah,
and I'm glad you actually mentioned security, because what we found is that typically security teams, they're actually well versed in technology, right? They're used to having technology that allows them to do their job, so they become added beneficiaries as well. We've even have, from a life safety evacuation perspective, we've had people want to have Density for that. I'm glad you mentioned that. But also even integrating into access control systems is this is a different topic, but some people have problems where one person badges in, but 3 people enter or 8 people enter. And that's another thing that you can solve for once you have real-time people count. So if you have questions on that too, or security, or you're worried about 21 kids coming to your gym, then that's another thing that we can help with. That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. And then with some other questions here we have, how are the devices powered and installed? So I'm glad that someone asked that, because we were keeping it pretty high level. The way it works is that the devices have a simple bracket. They look really nice. They slide right into a bracket that goes above a doorway. And then they can get plugged in through a regular outlet and then connected over Wi-Fi, or through Power over Ethernet Plus, which is basically just a Power over Ethernet, or just through a regular socket that converts into a power cord there. So you can do Power over Ethernet, or you can plug it into a regular outlet. But there does need to be always on power. That's how we're able to get the always on count. So if you have questions about that, we do a really good job of making it easy. I'm really impressed with that team, making it easy to install and scoping the space, and making it not a headache for you, especially for people who may not be used to installing this type of equipment. And then Mike, any other ideas about where this could be installed in a hospitality setting besides just a gym and a lounge? That's a question here.
Yeah, a gym, a lounge, a restaurant, meeting space. If you have a kind of a grand foyer and you want to know how many people are in that grand foyer, a convention hotel would probably also benefit from, or stadium, benefits from knowing how many people are in their large restrooms. You go to a Gaylord National hotel and there's 60 stalls in the women's restroom. Well, I think the housekeeping staff and the event team would like to know when the restrooms are busy so that they can tend to them in a timely manner. Because again, the first person that comes in after the meeting break, what kind of bathroom do they walk into? Does it look like 500 people just left, or does it look perfect? Gosh, I mean, there's just so many creative ways to use it.
Yeah, and I think, Mike, what you mentioned about the event space is actually really spot on too, because one thing that we have an advantage of with the technology is because it's going above doorways, you can get a huge ballroom, you can get the count just by doing, let's say, those 4 entrances or 3 entrances. And
Right.
You'll know that whole space because those devices all talk to each other. The bathroom use case, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're getting a lot of people from all walks of life in this whole smart building conversation who are trying to figure out, how do we actually clean a space? We don't want to clean a space that has never been used. We want to clean a space after it's been really, really used. And getting that type of data is really important. So we're just about done here. I'm just going to take a couple more questions here. Are you able to identify patterns in certain spaces and right-size staffing and services, and the patterns versus the real-time application? I'm really glad that someone mentioned that, because that's actually the most robust in terms of our actual dashboard. The real-time is actually something that you don't even really need a dashboard for, right? Once you configure it. But all of those dashboards, we can identify patterns in spaces. So in terms of right-sizing staffing and services, or even right-sizing the room, we've had people use this data for renovations, that they found that this area was actually not used as what they were intended. But were there any patterns, Mike, that you want to touch on that you could speak to about how do you actually think about that predictive nature of it?
Patterns, sure. It was pretty easy to see that in the lounge, where the patterns were, and we could see the shift from weekday to weekend. And we could see the shift on days where we know that we were heavily grouped up, meaning that we had, on a 455 room hotel, we had 350 group rooms, and they were part of a meeting next door into our conference center. So when you're a group house, you're a lot different than when you're a transient house, when nobody's staying having a meeting and they're just kind of coming in and out, or a leisure house. We could really probably see the pattern develop to where we were able to look forward and plan, and okay, well, next weekend we've got a convention in, and how are we typically on every other weekend where we had conventions versus weekends where we just had leisure, and then that kind of helps you understand your pattern and what your business might mean, because that's kind of the variable. I mean, you can count people to an extent, but you really want to know what it's telling you. And that's the insight that only the operator would really understand about their business. Density counts people great, but then you have to use your own intuitions and your own understanding of your business to know what the numbers actually mean.
Right. So on that note, I think that's a great way to end, because what we're saying is, like, understand your business, understand problems you might have, and you're the expert in that, and come to the table with any technology that you're using with a specific thing that you're trying to solve and a business value that you need met. So on that note, please email us, or to keep the conversation alive. This is a new frontier for all of us. We're all kind of thinking about what would the world look like if you actually had real-time data. What could a building tell you about what it needs? And we want to be going through that journey with you. So please feel free to reach out, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks so much.